Welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lance Barton. I'm at Austin College, which is a small liberal arts college in Texas, where I'm in the biology department and also head our undergraduate research office. So I will tell you, for our campus this summer, we are returning to quote unquote open for business, Texas style, somewhat sense of normalcy. And in fact, our campus starts administering vaccines to students this week on Thursday. So the hope is for us to have fully in-person summer research program. But again, our program is relatively small, probably compared to some of your campuses. We house and work with about 60 students on campus over the summer across the different programs here. So that gives you a little bit of idea of me and where I'm at and where we are at with our program. So I'll let Claire talk here for a moment, and then we got a question for you guys.
Hi everyone, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Claire McLeod. I'm an assistant professor at Miami University of Ohio. And in terms of summer programming, I co-lead our capstone field-based course. I'm in the geology department, and so our seniors go out west to Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana for 5 weeks, camping throughout various parts of the state, looking at the geology. And at the moment, we're a bit in limbo. We're waiting to hear whether or not our program's going to run. It was virtual last year, and the global programming's department are supposedly making a decision this week. At the moment, we don't have any plans to roll out vaccines for our students. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that. But at the moment, our program may run in person, it may not. So that's kind of where we are at the moment.
All right, so I think we wanted to start off by getting a little bit of a sense of where you are at with your programs. And so I think we have a quick poll question just to kind of see what you're planning for this summer. So we're just looking for you to answer question 1 initially, so we can get an idea where people are.
What exactly do you mean by hybrid?
A mix of in-person and remote.
Okay, so some of our people are in person, some are remote. We say we're hybrid.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it looks like you have to answer both to submit, so you can answer whatever for the second one.
What if we were still in a hopeful category?
I guess we should have had a 4th category. Maybe what's the intention right now, I guess, or okay. If you have any feedback. All right, so it looks like most folks are in some version of a hybrid component, okay? With some in person, some committed to remote. So thank you, everybody. Okay, I think, well, let me back up for a second. I think we want to emphasize, Claire and I definitely want to emphasize what Robin already said, is that these are meant to be somewhat casual conversations where we have an opportunity to share some ideas, hear what people are thinking, what they're kind of going through, what challenges they think they face, and maybe share some ideas. We're not here because we have answers. I think we are here just as much as the rest of you to kind of talk this through and see what people are thinking. So I think the first question that we wanted to kick out there was, what, regardless of your status, whether you're coming back to in-person, whether you've got some kind of mix, or whether you're committed to remote, if you're having a program, what lessons have we learned so far? What lessons you feel you've learned throughout this last year about how we could execute programs that are, for the summer, that are both safe for the students and faculty, but also effective? I mean, I think we've had some lessons in the last year about maybe some things that work and don't work very well. What are you kind of prioritizing, or what are you avoiding this summer? I'm just kind of curious.
I'll be glad to respond to that. Last summer, we were totally, it had to be no face-to-face, no connection whatsoever. Being in the state of Georgia, we're dictated our actions by the University System of Georgia and our governor. They are fully committed to fully going back in person starting summer. Personally, I see that as a little risky, but they don't ask me. But I'm the faculty coordinator for Mentored Undergraduate Research and Creative Endeavors. We've already selected our students across quite a broad range. We're going to offer 4 summer grants. We're a small liberal arts, but by small, we have about 6,500 undergraduates and about 1,500 graduates. But we still have social distancing and mask requirements. Most of the ones that we are funding will be in a lab by themselves, or they'll be out in the field collecting data in the natural environment. And one is an economics one, which will be picking up data that's in existence. We learned last year that we can turn on a dime if we have to, but we had to restrict it to studies that could be done with existing data. We couldn't let you couldn't get within 50 feet of each other at that time. So, if we have to flip back, if something happens suddenly, we're going to be kind of in deep doo here because we have students out in the field now. And so if something happens and our numbers go up, then I have to ask, what alternatives could we even possibly think of at that point? We've emphasized do your data collection early and start your write-ups because we don't know how long we'll be able to be out in the fields.
So I can jump in as well. I'm at Towson University. This is a state school in the state of Maryland, the second largest after the College Park. This was a primarily undergraduate institution, but right now we are at R3 designation very recently. Last summer, we had a mix of programs. Some of undergraduate research was in person. The university convened a panel that basically designed guidelines for all in-person research, be it with faculty or with students. So there are lab protocols and so forth that were established for the labs, for field research, that kind of thing. So most of the students who did participate in person, like they were physically in a lab, they had to follow a certain very strict protocol for how they interact with the faculty member, how to minimize the time of instruction in the same room, and so forth. I don't think we're doing anything different this summer compared to the previous summer. There was a little bit of drop-off in productivity for students who were fully remote. Right, so and somehow the interest partially has waned. I think we'll keep the strategy of having bi-weekly check-ins with the students. This served as sort of a prompt for them to, okay, I need something to talk about, right? So basically to make sure that the students are staying on track. So this summer, there is a slight complication. Our science departments, all of them, they are getting a new building. They are excited to be moving from the 50-plus-year-old one into the new thing with the new toys. But they're a little bit worried. How are they going to navigate the moving and working with the students at the same time? So I think for us, this is the biggest issue.
Go ahead, Karen.
So last summer, we basically had to do a pivot when we were accepting students just as, I'm at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, so large public R1. And we had just accepted students, and like 2 weeks later we went home. So we basically had to email everybody and say, we would love for you to accept this, but you need to let us know how you can pivot your research, because there was at that point not even a way for anybody to get permission to be in lab. There was no face-to-face interviews, none of that. Almost all of our students were able to pivot. And those that were not, we offered them the opportunity to defer till this summer. Since then, there's a return to campus plan. Most of our students doing laboratory research have been able to get back into the lab in some fashion, even if it's, yes, you can be in there one afternoon a week because the lab is too small to allow the postdoc and the faculty member and 5 undergraduates and 2 grad students to be there at the same time. But I think 2 lessons learned for us. One was that we need to reach out more to students who are remote, because it's much easier for them to sort of lose that connection to us, even if they have a mentor. And so during the school year, we have programs during the school year as well. And I made it a point to reach out to the students more and to talk to the mentors about that. Secondly, that for some students, there was no pivot at all. Their research went remote. It was no problem. I mean, if you're doing interviews, you do them on Zoom. If you're doing surveys, you use email, or you use, Qualtrics, or you use, and so for some of the students, the only difference was they didn't get to stay on campus last summer. But for some of the students, they really have to think about how to do their research in a new way, in a different way. And so I think that was our second lesson learned, was that the changes that have to be made for the students are really different depending on the kind of research that they're doing. And this summer, we're going to be students who can get permission to do face-to-face will be face-to-face. Those that can do it remote will be remote. Our programming will still be remote. So our seminars and all that will still be virtual.
Karen's experience both last summer and this summer sounds really similar to what we're doing. I'm Erin Golden. I'm the director of undergrad research at University of Colorado, Denver. So we actually came into this position, quarantine started. So we had to do a similar thing as students last minute last summer to switch to virtual. And I think it worked pretty well for most of our students. I think most of them still felt very supported by their mentors and had pretty good experiences. We require all of our students to go to professional development activities on Friday. So we did all of those virtual last year. And then we introduced, trying to recapture the cohort model last year, we did some like open office hour lunches, which is me and our undergraduate research advisor. We usually get like 1 student a week out of 20. So I got to know the students that showed up pretty well. This year, we're going to require these lunch meetups just to try and form community. And then we've shifted the focus of our professional development workshops away from things like, I don't know, how to apply to grad school, which I think we do still have that one, but like how to read an academic paper and kind of those more basic research skills to around shaping your identity as an academic. So a lot of kind of, these are our more advanced students. We require them to we don't mentor match, right? They come in with a mentor in an independent project. So focusing, more on the unspoken rules of academia and considering, what privileges you're bringing into academia and how we can kind of appreciate what everyone brings into a space, which I'm pretty excited about. It's been fun kind of forming that program. But yeah, we are trying to I'm on like 5 strategy committees to try and figure out how we can get researchers back into labs by June 1st, which will be pretty awesome. We're doing vaccinations on campus. I think we'll still have lots of rules around space constraints and everything, but I'm excited that we're pushing to get folks back in person. I really want to try and do an outdoor summer symposium at the end of the summer. So considering, can we hang posters around campus and have it be like a guided like audio tour? I don't know. So we'll see. I'll keep you updated.
I like that idea. I always wanted to do that with our spring event, but in Texas, the wind is so unpredictable, right? That it's always been the challenge. I've never been able to figure out how to do it without students like chasing their posters down the street or something. But I would be
So we have a big sidewalk chalk festival, and that's my latest thing is like, can we like pair students with artists to do some kind of like sidewalk chalk public research communication thing? I don't know. I've been stuck in my house too long.
I like that idea. That's kind of cool. Vanessa?
Hi, yeah, thank you. Um, so I'm at Albion College, a small liberal arts college in Albion, Michigan. And we are going to do a hybrid summer event. And last summer ours was fully remote. However, Albion has been in person for the past year. There has been incredibly rigorous testing. Students last semester were tested once a week. Faculty, I think, were tested every other week. This week, they've gone to once a month testing, but they are doing rigorous wastewater testing, quarantining, contact tracing. And so they've been very, very successful at keeping incidences of COVID on campus very low and really being on top of it whenever anything does happen. The biggest problem for the summer, you know, as other people have said, is, you know, getting students in research labs fairly small spaces and making sure that there's enough social distancing. In part, we've done this. Faculty are only allowed to mentor up to 3 research students through the funding that we have available for them. And so this, you know, fits into the research labs with no problem at all. And they'll be able to spill over into teaching spaces as we need to. One of the things we did last summer that worked so incredibly well that we're doing this summer is our students are required to give a weekly or attend a weekly meeting and give a presentation once throughout the course of that meeting. And what we had them do last summer was pre-record their presentations. They sent it to me. I'm the director of the undergraduate research program. They sent it to me. I got it up on our Moodle site by noon on Wednesday. And then students were required to watch each other's presentations and provide and submit questions through an open online forum. And then Thursday at 3 p.m., we all came together. We use Google Meet, not Zoom. We all came together on Google Meet. And the students, we basically did a moderated Q&A. I went through the questions, pulled from the student questions, asked, you know, the student presenter, and then opened it up to regular questioning. And it was so incredibly affirming because we've always done weekly presentations, but usually the students give it up, they give their presentation, and it's only faculty in the room that actually ask questions. Occasionally you may get one student question, but because I prioritized the student questions and because students were required to submit questions, it really gave them a sense of ownership, but that's not really the word. Just like, you know, to hear the students when they heard me ask their question, you know, they pop into the chat. Oh, thank you so much for asking my question. That made me feel so good. And just to hear that they're, you know, what they were thinking about the presentations was validated. It was a really, really cool experience. And because it was an open forum where the students got to submit their questions, the students learned very early that they could go in and read through the questions and feel prepared. Oh, like, oh, okay, those are the questions they'll probably get, you know, she's probably going to ask me this one. And so they had a chance to really respond and think about the questions as opposed to being put on the spot. So since we're hybrid this summer, we're going to be doing that again. And we just don't have a place that's going to be big enough to put all of our students for an in-person meeting with, you know, our 40 research students and all of their faculty mentors. So I'm really looking forward to that again this summer and, you know, seeing how we can modify that and again, just get more participation. It was also really nice because we could send the presentations to donors. A lot of our student money is endowed. And so I was able to say, hey, look at what a student is doing in your name. And it was a really great PR IA thing for our college as well.
I'm curious about your endowed fellowships, Vanessa. How did you guys, how did you do that? Did you work with advancement to set those up or?
Many of them have been in place for 10 plus years. But yes, we do work with advancement very closely on trying to get new money for other endowments. So our program started about 20 years ago, and a lot of the smaller pots of research money that were present on campus to support research were kind of combined under one umbrella called FERSCA. But yeah, that's, I would like to work more with IA. I keep telling them as, people cycle through, I'm always contacting them and saying, hey, I'd love to work with you. Let me tell you about our priorities. But, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Not to derail the conversation too much, but do you mind telling me like what your average size of award is? Or like, do they usually fund a whole student or?
So about half of them can fully fund a student, and the other half of them is kind of a courtesy in name only. Our students, we've modeled our program on an REU, so students can stay on campus for up to 10 weeks to do research. This summer, they're getting paid, I think it's $480 a week, and housing is included in that. So each student, the stipend is about $4,800 per student if they stay the full 10 weeks. The faculty also get a stipend for working with the students, and then they can ask for supply money. So some of our endowments will fund 4 or 5 students, and other endowments cover about $1,500 of it. But we still name them as the Dobson Fellows or whatever like that. So.
Cool, thanks.
The size of the faculty stipend ranges. I think the largest amount is, I want to say it's $3,000. I haven't gone through and done this yet for the summer. I need to. And the lowest is about $1,500 to $2,000. If we have extra money, we can give a little bit of extra money for faculty who are working with more than one student. But yeah, it's more of a, it doesn't nearly pay for faculty time. It's more of a thank you for being awesome type stipend. So yeah, anywhere from $1,500 to about $3,000 for the faculty stipend, depending on the number of weeks, the number of students, the number of self-reported hours that the faculty say that they're going to be working with the students. Our program covers everything, not just sciences. And so sometimes we have like an English professor who may be working with the student who's like, yeah, I'm going to meet the student like 3 hours a week, and that's it. And that's going to be at the lower scale of the faculty stipend.
All right, well, it sounds like from what I've heard from most folks, with the exception of maybe Doreen, who's got a relatively interesting challenge to face of if you end up switching back after starting, how do we sort of manage that transition? It sounds like a lot of folks are really thinking about that community piece that was often there when we were in person. Are there other ideas or other things that people are thinking about in terms of their how they're building community amongst the students, how they're building camaraderie, how they're engaging those students regardless of whether they're in person or remote? Because I know this is one of the things that's occupied a lot of my thoughts lately. So I'd be curious to hear if other folks have some interesting solutions or things that are working for them.
I think, Lance, there's something that we're going to try. I'll let you know how it goes, right? So we're going to start utilizing Slack a lot more to try to get the students to communicate a little bit better. We tried to determine if we wanted to use Slack or Discord. A lot of students that I work with feel more comfortable with Discord, but we decided to go with Slack and do some communication that way. Students for our program, I'm at Grand Valley State University in the west side of Michigan. Last summer, we went fully remote for the entire summer, and students felt a little disconnected, but they didn't want to be connected in person. And so one of the things that we've talked about is how we can slowly wade back into the in-person. So I don't know about y'all, but sometimes I feel like I I don't have the same social skills that I might have had like 18 months ago. And I know the same is true for a lot of our students. And so we're slowly wading our students back in. So we're going to have some events outside depending on protocols for the institution, but we're also going to try that. One thing that we're prioritizing right now is we are prioritizing the mental health of our faculty and students. So our programming has changed a little bit. So we're really trying to focus on helping our students reintegrate, but also think about career plans, academic advising, fellowships advising, kind of pivoting as they need to. A lot of our students over the last year have lost a little bit of hope in terms of their plans. We're all scrapped, so we're going to try to help them make some adjustments. And for our faculty colleagues, just providing space and flexibility. And that's something that we've always been. I'm a rule follower, so a little more rigid with how we do things, and we're providing a lot more flexibility this year so that our faculty and students can regroup a little bit during the summer and not be exhausted by the time they have fall.
So could you maybe give us a little idea what you mean by flexibility, just out of curiosity?
There are some requirements when it comes to filling out different documents, flexing those. I'm multitasking, so I'm sending a note to my mentor saying, hey, we're setting up another opportunity for you to attend this program. We're also going to have it asynchronously. I'm doing a lot of listening right now to see what people need. And also trying to retain what worked well last year. So we decided that all of our programming is going to be remote for our research program, essentially. But we are deferring to people having opportunities to meet. So faculty and student mentors to meet one-on-one, to be in labs, to do the data collection. We're creating and providing space in the library. So that's where I am right now, and having specific dedicated spaces to faculty and students so that they have the ability to connect with one another, but it's not in personal space. So really just listening to what would alleviate some uncertainty and anxiety. And having predictable schedules, having just an open office hour space for students to come in and talk about what's working, what's not working. So things like that. So they're not as firmly designed out. We're playing a lot by ear. And that's one thing that we learned last summer, is the ability to pivot was incredibly important. And so we're trying to retain that. I don't know if that helped answer your question, Lance.
So Susan, I think I caught this as part of one of your answers, but sort of the idea of, coming back to some point in person, having had a year to a year and a half of perhaps not being in person. So how to sort of transition to that sort of environment, but also, like you said, before the fall starts, where it sounds like a lot of us are going to be back in person, how do we work to prevent the burnout of our students, but also the burnout of their either grad student mentors or the faculty? If anyone has any thoughts on coping or addressing strategies to alleviate that potential burnout, which I guess is applicable in other scenarios too, not just coming out of the pandemic.
We have a program that's been going on for about a year and a half. It's called a research circle, where our seasoned researchers in all disciplines reach out to freshmen, sophomores, juniors, people who have not researched, and they meet together and they talk about ways to overcome things. And they've had several meetings. In fact, we have one tomorrow night where they talk to the students and share ideas, even if it happens to be on stress of COVID. We've been on campus all year, but some of us have not. I've been on Zoom, but others have been on campus all year with 6 feet between chairs, masks, and all that. So they'll stop their talking about their research they're doing or something and share with each other. And it seems to be more successful when students are helping other students, especially like-minded students in research. How are you doing that? How can I do that? Who can help me? We've seen that be very successful this last year because they don't care what I say, but they do care what another student has to say, and they come up with some great ideas. And so we're going to keep that going over the summer to where they can come together and share those ideas and help each other. Because like I said, it's out of our control. We have no control if they shut us down. It's just something, and they have great ideas across disciplines. So let them, you know, come up with things to make, I don't know how I bumped it, but I bumped my mute. But let them come up with ideas to help each other has been very successful for us so far. As far as faculty burnout, we're had. We're just had at this point. One more meeting. It's like somebody believes that just because you're not all face to face, that you have time for all these other meetings you never had before. And so our faculty is getting exhausted. I was surprised we had 13 applications, and we usually get about 13 to 20 every summer. And we got 13 applications for summer research, which surprised me because so many faculty just feel so burned out.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I like your idea of the research circle, and I'm a little bit actually kind of nervous about some of my faculty because last year when we pivoted to remote, we had a group of faculty, and I won't pick on anybody, but at the moment, I'll just pick on a chemist, generally speaking, right? Like, well, my chemistry is around synthesizing a molecule, right? So how do I synthesize a molecule if I can't be in the lab, right? So I'm just gonna take a pass on this summer. And that was fine. Like there, we were more than happy to accommodate people who could work remote, more than happy to let people pass who weren't. But as we came back to sort of a hybrid status in the fall, more in person in the spring, as we worked through it, some of those faculty have never really restarted working with undergraduates all year. And now I see they're signed up to have like 4 students this summer. And that's not a huge concern for me because we will have space, like our teaching labs are empty. So most people are being assigned a teaching space so they can, 4 students, a faculty member in a teaching space, there's plenty of room. I'm more concerned about faculty members sort of still thinking it's 2019 and how they interact with the students and sort of picking that up when things have been, maybe not the same way. I know that's something that we've talked about in my department is that we all miss each other. Like we don't see each other except on Zoom faculty meetings, and, sort of that sharing of ideas and bringing the students together, that sort of side of the faculty social network that informs scholarship is also hurting. But that burnout is a real factor, right? How do you help that without putting faculty feeling like it's one more thing that they're under? I'm just curious if anybody's encountered that, thought about that, or done anything to help or found a successful tool.
I haven't found anything successful with that, but today was the first day I have stepped back on campus in a year and a half. And I went there because we filmed the Aurora Award video since we won the award this year, one of 2. And it was weird. I got to talk to people that I hadn't been able to talk to for a year and a half. I mean, I've talked to them on Zoom, but it was like, oh, Jordan's real. It was something unusual. We're still 6 feet in masks, but it was cool to actually get to be with people. And I think students need that socialization, but so do your faculty. And it's hard. Zoom is great, but frankly, I've run out of backgrounds. I'm constantly changing them. I'm worn out from it. But I think we are seeing our faculty just exhausted. I'm hearing it. Those in the classroom wearing masks, wearing shields, carrying a laptop, because they've got those on Zoom and those in the classroom. They don't want to take on one more thing. They just don't want to. And even their productivity in their own research has been suffering. So why take on a burden of students, even though they've always mentored in the past? So I don't know if anybody else is seeing it, but we sure are.
One of our challenges has been that we're seeing the faculty burnout. We're seeing the student burnout. They don't want to talk to each other on screens anymore. I'm at the University of Vermont, and we've had relatively low numbers, thank goodness, throughout this. But we don't have a plan in place to get our non-Vermonters students vaccinated, but we do hope to be fully engaged in labs and in the field over the summer. So it's, while we say that we have this goal, it's not really clear that we're going to get them in a healthy place or in a safe place to sort of be fully engaged. But one of the things we are seeing is that when the faculty started to pull back, it started with, they dumped all the undergrads and they focused on faculty first, faculty to sort of secure their lab space and their field work. Then they brought in the grad students next. We've got about 1,500 grad students on campus, but we've got 10,000 undergrads. And they sort of brought in the seniors who were doing thesis projects. They were the next ones who were sort of deemed to come in to be able to fulfill their requirements. And then slowly we saw a trickle of juniors coming in. But one of the things that we've been trying in the office is we've been trying to develop students earlier because we're a combined fellowships and undergraduate research office. And without that track of getting first and second year students those early experiences, we're starting to already see the logjam or the sort of the lack of experience for those younger students coming in. So developing programs with, you know, I like the research circle idea. I like the sort of grad students mentoring undergrads, but the sort of realistic ability of people to be in space together is where we're sort of coming up against the impediment. Is we're not sure how to get students who have total screen burnout into a relationship online that they actually want to participate in, to get them developed, to get them scaffolded into further and further experiences. So that's kind of where we're stuck at this moment.
So I don't mind jumping in. So my name is Merle Massey, and I'm the coordinator for undergraduate research at the University of Saskatchewan. And Canada is quite a bit further behind the US in terms of vaccinations and so on and so forth. We are, I don't know, 65th in countries around the world. We are actually just at the beginning of what we can see is the third wave is starting to surge. And so all of our universities are still remote for the most part in Canada, and certainly here at the University of Saskatchewan. So it is expected that summer research will be primarily remote, but there are always some labs and some researchers who are either out in the field doing agricultural research at major agricultural college, or in other spaces where they are bringing in, you know, students and people online into the campus. And so we are seeing a bit of a hybrid in that way, but that's each individual faculty member has to apply to the university to get permission to, you know, reopen their lab and kind of restart their research. And so that's been happening since last summer and all through the fall and winter. And so we are seeing more of that. We are expecting this coming fall to be a hybrid in-person labs, particularly for science labs, which are not very effective any other way, we've discovered. But anything that can be done remotely, continue remote. And then the hope is to be fully back in person January 2021, right in the middle of Canadian winter. Great job, everyone. But my office, I don't know if the rest of you are facing funding challenges, but I still have not received any summer funding. Normally, my office gives away anywhere from 32 to 45 undergraduate research awards. They're matched by faculty in the amount of $4,500 and then matched by faculty for $4,500 for a $9,000 for a 16-week experience. That funding was not released to me this year at all. And so that's 45 less students that would be sort of coming under my umbrella this summer for for any kind of undergraduate research. We have a national governing body for National Sciences and Engineering Research Council. It's called NSERC, and they have undergraduate student funding. Those were released. Those were just picked up last week, and so those 63 students are in place. Our College of Medicine, our vet college, they generally have some undergraduate student, researchers, and then of course faculty can hire undergraduate students if they're holding a grant, right? And so my job is to try and collect in this sort of disparate group and help and support them. So last year we rolled out a new program. Last year was the pilot right in the middle of the pandemic. So we pivoted and did everything online, and it's called the Student Undergraduate Research Experience. And how we set it up is a co-curriculum program, which means that the students who go through this program, if they go through at least 10 hours of programming, they receive a co-curricular record on their transcript for the program, and the student uptake has been very high. So of course last summer we had about 300 students across campus that were part of the SURE program. They got signed up by their college or by their department, and then they had to opt out. It was so we walked them through things, sort of the classic traditional things, anything from how to conduct a really widespread literature review. Of course, so many students, when they pivoted to doing work from home, all of a sudden they were working with existing data, and they were doing literature searches and literature reviews and so on and so forth. And so their summer research experience looked very different than what they had originally anticipated. And so it just, by happy coincidence, this pilot program that we were already initiating happened to pick those students up. And what it did is that it sort of outsourced from the faculty perspective a lot of that kind of nitty gritty around, this is how to do literature search, this is how to do robust analysis, this is how to write up your literature review, and those sorts of, and then later on in the summer, things like how to do a research poster, all of these sorts of webinars that we put together. We also had a secondary vein where we talked about research management, research data management, and things like, we had some specialty classes around SPSS or in vivo, or these sorts of things that students might need. And so students in particular disciplines could sign up for that. Anything around, of course, lab safety and ethics. Ethics is a big thing when you're doing research in Canada, whether it's human or animal. And so if students had to go through an ethics training, then that could be included in there towards their 10 hours of CCR credit. But then the third vein was professional management and development. So that's where we did a lot of equity, diversity, and inclusion events that students could come to, and things around Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous specialty research, community engaged research, these sorts of things, which some of our students at our university are very heavily involved in. So we did some collaborative work with that. And also our Student Employment and Career Center came on board, and they did a lot of things around how to create a good resume, and how to take your research skills and how to find the words to put that on your resume to really, kind of flip that. It said not assuming that every student is going to go into graduate school, but how to talk about that skill set and get that really focused on your resume. So these were, and then of course at the end of the summer we had our symposium, so a capstone symposium for the students, and that's something that they all look forward to, and we did that completely online as well. So we're looking at running, and you'll notice the way that I laid that out is that it followed very much sort of the trajectory of what a typical 4-month research program would look like, sort of from the literature review all the way to the poster session at the end kind of thing. And so kind of walking them through that. It was highly successful for a pilot. We actually ran it again fall and winter just to pick up the students who are doing honors projects or capstone classes, that kind of thing, and kind of give them that support. And the faculty have said that what it did is that it allowed them to concentrate on discipline-specific training in their lab or in their field research, but then we had this kind of collective piece where we could pick up some of that, some of those skill sets that were a little bit more, relevant across more disciplines. And so that really worked out well. So we're just in the process of kind of getting the dates and times set to roll that out again this year. But yes, what I found is that the students were the ones who were looking for the connector pieces, and they started to actually create those connector pieces. So students came to me and they set up a journal club, which I supported. So that was something that they came to because they wanted more connections to each other. And then this fall, one of the students who was in the SURE program last summer set up a club on campus. It's called the Science Research and Society Club, and it meets every Friday at noon for a kind of a lunch and learn, and whether it's a special guest or a particular topic or that kind of thing. And the students who come regularly to that that club formed a Discord as well that they opened up to everyone. And so that's something that I don't know. I'm not very good at Discord. I'm just lucky when I can log on consistently, but it's something that I think the students know and understand and can kind of take it as a space to do their own. So some of those like pizza lunch and learn kind of events, or like lab crawls that we had originally envisioned in person, we had to kind of pivot and figure out other ways. But this asking the students what they want to do, I found was quite helpful. So that's where we're at. But yeah, if anyone else has any funding challenges, I'm sitting in the middle of one and I'm not quite sure exactly how to go forward for that.
Yeah. Really cool. How many students were able to support last summer through this program?
Well, so there's kind of two levels. So my office had funding last year for about 30, I think there was 38 students, and then I had another 10 through a separate program. So my office was able to fund, or half fund, right? The faculty had to come to the table with the other half, just about 50 students. But then that's over and above that. There were 75 students who were funded by NSERC. There were another 50 students in biomedical and the College of Medicine who were, so overall there were about 300 students who were undertaking undergraduate research across the whole U of S. So University of Saskatchewan is one of the one of the 50 medical doctoral universities in Canada, and so we're an R1 university.
So just thinking about providing the kind of support, from literature review to presentations for 300 students, how did you do it?
Online webinars for the most part, and then we recorded all of them. So if a student couldn't come in person, they could still watch it afterward. They were in the middle of something in their lab and they couldn't come, or they were out in the field and on a quad somewhere with no Wi-Fi access. So we did try and make the program as flexible as possible, so that if students couldn't come in person, like to be at a live webinar, that they could watch it afterward. All of them are on YouTube, and so all of the ones that we recorded, we have a channel on YouTube, and so they're all there. So that was part of it. I didn't set it up. So as part of their professional development, they had to track which ones they attended or which ones they did, and then they reported to me at the beginning of September which they actually attended, in order for them to qualify for their co-curricular credit. And only 75 requested their co-curricular, that said that they had done their 10 hours and qualified for co-curricular credit. So I was actually quite happy with that, because I thought, all 290 or 300 or whatever would say, yes, I did. And I'd be like, okay, but and I've never seen you all summer. Who are you? But no, actually they were quite, they were really good about being very professional and tracking themselves on that. So at this time, I'm a one-person office with just a student, so who supports me. So yeah, the students have to pull their weight and be honest, or as honest as possible.
As to funding, a lot of our students go through REUs. Our science, biology got a really large grant, and so they'll fund a lot of the students that we won't. We only fund about 3,000 for an 8-week summer session, but we depend a lot on the colleges and schools within our university who have these grants, and faculty have grants where they hire the summer students. I can only account for the ones that aren't qualified for the bigger grants that are coming out of like the biology and out of, by the way, we just got a new science building too. It's under construction right now. It should be ready in the fall. But so we've got more going on than what I can account for. A lot of it comes from faculty money, but our money was frozen, and some of it was taken by the provost office, but we still had enough because our students didn't travel to conferences. We paid just the registration fee, that we were able to still give the same amount of summer. But we're running a little bit tight, but not as bad as we were afraid it would happen.
So I know we're running up to close to 6 o'clock, but one thing I think Lance and I were also interested in asking is if there is anything that CUR as a community could do to maybe support some of the summer programming. So I know some people mentioned like cross-university collaborations, whether it's undergraduate groups in universities in states that are either neighbors or in the same state or same time zone, or maybe even across time zone. Is there something that we could do within CUR to highlight or ask the members if that's something that was of interest? Or is there something that you're looking to CUR in terms of supporting your summer programming, whether that's in person, hybrid, remote, or whatever that might look like? Is there something as an organization, member driven, that we could do?
Well, I think the idea of having some kind of either a listing or resource about different summer programs so that there would be an opportunity for cross-institutional collaboration is productive. I had a number of faculty members who collaborated with colleagues at other universities. Most of those connections are made, hey, we went to grad school together, so I'm working with students, you're working with students, let's do it together. Right, and those were quite helpful because for students, this is like, checking out competition and so forth, right? So yeah, if there is a way to facilitate that, that would be helpful. For me, the summer research program university-wide at my school is new. Last year was the first year of the university level one. There are smaller college level programs. So for me, I guess some sort of a classification of different summer programs, the level of centralization of the programs, or like basically the level which students are being supported would be helpful, because there is a variety of approaches so that I can communicate to the bosses like what is available, right, and I can advocate for a particular thing that fits the school well.
Are you a member of the CUR communities? Because I often see those other universities with summer research opportunities, no matter what school you're in, pop up in the CUR community.
Right, absolutely. I go there. This is my daily read. This is excellent. So I send this around. So maybe this is so that one tends to be like hit or miss, right? So I see something pop up for chemistry. I'm going to forward it to the chemistry professor, right? And but I don't know whether it makes sense to have a more systematic kind of a resource.
It reminds me, Alexei, or it reminds me a little bit of a kind of a scoping review of undergraduate research programs, across Canada and the US, sort of thing, just sort of a search to see what everybody's doing and what that looks like and categorizing it.
Right. So different disciplines are a little bit ahead of the curve than others. Like for example, biology seems to be way ahead compared to pretty much everybody else that I thought that I've seen. Right. So in terms of thinking about assessment, the classification of outcomes from shorter term to longer term, right? All that infrastructure is kind of already established, right? So for me, it would be helpful to have this that sort of broader based, something that I could go to people in psychology or in the lab sciences or in history, right? So they will not have, or even in performance arts, right? So they have slightly different language when they're talking about, but they're talking about the same things.
Are there any other last questions, comments, anything that you want to share within the group, or anything that we didn't get to today?
One thing I was going to mention, Lance, is I think that, and I think this gets at Claire's question, that CUR's uniquely positioned to pull multiple institutional programs together. So having, using your example of chemistry, right? Having aspiring chemists from all over the US or even regionally to come together to listen to a talk would be phenomenal. And I think that's something that CUR has the positionality to do. Even pulling together faculty colleagues that are supporting students in particular disciplines. I mean, the summer is a place to provide some of that support. Not everyone's going to be able to do larger conferences and things like that. But doing an hour Zoom piece where I can connect with my colleagues across the country, I can fit that in my schedule. So, I mean, that's one of those pieces that I toss out. I mean, I'm certainly going to follow up with Vanessa and see if we can connect our schools. We're on opposite sides of the state with a private and a public too, which would be interesting. But it would be nice to be able to connect folks from different regions. So that's one thing I'd put out there is that would be kind of cool option. So I think, Claire, that's kind of what you were asking too, is like, how can CUR help? And I think that's one place that our students would benefit from as well.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah.
Still working on what is a healthy Zoom pause, I feel like, even after all this time. I'm always afraid of hitting that space bar and talking over somebody else just at that moment. So I think thank you everyone for your insights, for the conversation. I think I've taken a page worth of notes here. I've got some, I think there's some really interesting lessons that we heard, some really interesting ideas about what people are trying to help build that community, make those connections, try and support faculty and students without overburdening them and adding to the burnout features. And, you know, I think this is still going to be, there's still a lot of experimentation going on. And so hopefully we can continue to connect through opportunities like this to share ideas and help build camaraderie and community and help each other out. So I thank you for coming and contributing, and I wish everybody a good evening and a good week.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it together.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you all for the conversations. This has been great.
Thanks, you guys. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Vanessa, I'll be in touch. I wrote down your name.
Do we need anything else, Robin?
I did too. It's